This summary is about the book, The Courage to be Disliked. In this book, you will learn about rejecting trauma, the nature of all problems being interpersonal relationship problems, discarding other people's tasks, where the center of the world is, and living in earnest in the here and now. Introduction. Have you ever wondered where our pain, our hatred, our insecurities come from? Why do we always think about what people will think about us? Do they like us or not? And if they don't, why not? A strange restlessness always resides in the heart, as if some invisible weight is placed on our chest. We want to be happy, but we are afraid that people might reject us, that we might be left alone. This fear is so deep that we often stop living our own lives. Still, a faint voice comes from some corner of our heart. Is this really my life? Was I born for this? Imagine a simple night. A young man, troubled by the questions of his life, goes to a philosopher. He wants to know what the secret to happiness is, and from there begins a conversation that is not just about that boy, but about all of us. This story gives us a new eye to see how our troubles, our relationship problems, our fears are actually created by us. And when we understand this, it is shocking. It makes us angry. And yes, it also makes us scared because it means we are our own biggest problem. But at the same time, a new hope also awakens because if we are the problem, the solution is also with us. For that, we just need a little courage. Courage to accept that the past does not define us. Courage to break free from the expectations of others. And most importantly, the courage to be disliked. Yes, let people think what they want about us. We just have to live our own lives in our own way. But this is not so easy because we have all tied our identity, our worth to the opinions of others. As soon as someone dislikes us, our entire confidence is shaken. Then we start to pretend. We wear masks so that people will accept us. And slowly, our real self gets lost somewhere. But what will happen if we take off that mask? What will happen if we truly listen to our hearts and live the way we want to without the fear of whether someone will like us or not? This is the suspense of this journey. This is not just a search for happiness. It is a search for ourselves. It is a quest in which we will learn how to take the steering of our life into our own hands, how to be free from the wounds of the past, how to be happy even without the approval of others, and most importantly, how to love ourselves. So, let's embark on this journey. Chapter 1. Deny Trauma. The night had grown deep. The stars in the sky were silently twinkling, as if the whole world had fallen asleep. But a young man was restless. 1,000 questions were swimming in his eyes. He went straight to the old philosopher's house. As soon as the door opened, without any formal hello, he shot a straight question. Can a person truly change? Or are we always slaves to our past? The philosopher smiled. There was a mysterious calmness on his face. He said, "Come, sit down. I'm going to tell you a secret that can change your whole world. But for this, you have to break your old way of thinking." The young man got a little annoyed. "Secret? Tell me clearly. Does all the pain I went through in childhood, all the wrong things that happened to me, decide the direction of my life? Is that why I'm not happy today?" The philosopher took a deep breath. "No, your trauma, your past, does not define you. What happened is in the past, but you are still stuck in its web. You think that your anger, your weakness, your sadness are all a result of the past. But the truth is, you are writing your own story right now, at this very moment." The young man was shocked. "Are you saying that my past is irrelevant? All the troubles of my childhood that are deeply embedded in me, do they mean nothing?" "They do, but not as much as you think. Look, people often say, 'I get angry since childhood,' or 'I'm insecure because I didn't get love in childhood.' But have you ever thought that you get angry because you have decided that this is the way to get your point across? You're insecure because it makes you feel safe. Expectations remain low." The young man was confused. "So, I choose to be unhappy myself? This is madness." The philosopher chuckled softly. "Yes, it sounds like madness, but it is the truth. We all choose behaviors for our goals. Your trauma is just an excuse. You use your past to do what you want to do in the present. The young man got a little angry. So, am I a liar? Am I lying about myself? Not a liar. You have just created a narrative in your mind, and now you are living in that story. Imagine a man who says that he is afraid to talk to people because he had to face bullying in childhood, but in reality, he avoids it to prevent rejection in the future. This is not trauma. It is his self-chosen way of handling the situation. He uses the past as a shield. The young man fell into deep thought. Some memories ran through his mind, how he used to sit separately from everyone in school, how he was afraid to go to a friend, and then he would convince himself that this was his nature because of his past. But was it true? Or was he just keeping himself in a safe zone? Then the philosopher looked into his eyes and said, "Look, your past is important, but it is not meant to hold you back. It is meant to give you lessons, but you have made it your identity. And as long as you keep thinking, I am like this because this happened to me, you can never be free." Hearing his words, a strange nervousness spread over the young man's face, because for the first time, he felt that maybe he himself had built his own cage, and if he really had a choice, then why was he living in that cage until now? The philosopher put a hand on his shoulder. He said, "You need courage. Courage to accept that you are responsible for who you are today. And this is scary because now there will be no blaming game. No blaming the past, no blaming the parents, no blaming society. Just you and your choices." A slight silence fell in the room. The young man closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. Perhaps he was now standing at the first step of that long journey, a journey where he had to break his own self-made boundaries, and he also had to face the fear of whether people would like him if he truly listened to his heart. The philosopher said softly, "Welcome to the real journey. Now you have to decide whether you will continue to live in the shadow of the past or move toward the light where you truly belong."
Chapter 2. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. The same old wooden table, the same two chairs, and the same dim light were still in the room. But this time, there was a little more curiosity and a little more restlessness in the young man's eyes. He quickly shot a question. If my past doesn't define me, then where do my problems come from? Why can't I be happy? The philosopher calmly picked up his teacup. The root of all your problems is just one: interpersonal relationships. All the stress, jealousy, anger, or sadness you feel, it all comes from your relationships with others. The ultimate root of all your problems is that. The young man was shocked. So all my troubles, whether they are about my job, family, or self-confidence, are all because of people? Exactly, said the philosopher slowly. Just think, if you were alone in this world, if there was no other person, you would not need to be insecure. You would not have to prove yourself to anyone, nor would you have to compare yourself with anyone. All your worries would vanish. Your ego also gets hurt only when there is someone else with whom you can compare your value. The young man was silent for a while. Then he said, "So basically, I want to look good in the eyes of others, which is why I'm afraid and unhappy." The philosopher looked at him deeply. Yes, you drive every emotion, every behavior with this desire that people should accept you. Your hunger for approval is so deep that you often forget yourself. This is the reason that all the problems you see in your life are actually relationship problems. The young man became a little defensive. So am I wrong if I want people to like me? Is there anything bad in that? Nothing is wrong or bad, said the philosopher, but the problem comes when your entire happiness starts to depend on the opinions of others. Think, if someone ignores you or doesn't praise you, why do you get upset? Because you have given your self-worth into their hands. Now the young man's face became a little serious. He started remembering many of his old moments. When someone didn't notice him, he became sad, or when someone praised him, he was overjoyed. In reality, his feelings had become a roller coaster according to people's opinions. The philosopher took a deep breath and said, "Now think about where jealousy comes from. You feel jealous of someone because you compare. If a friend becomes more successful than you, and uneasiness comes into your mind, you feel like you are left behind somewhere. And this comparison is only possible when there is someone else. If there was no one, there would be no jealousy." The young man was slowly understanding the depth of it. He said softly, "So I have handed over all my happiness and sadness to others, and because of this, I always feel uneasy?" "Exactly. This is your real problem," said the philosopher. "You have given the steering of your life to others, and when someone doesn't live up to your expectations, your heart breaks. You feel like you have no value, whereas the truth is, your value is only because you exist, not because of someone's approval or rejection." Now a slight moisture came to the young man's eyes, because he realized that for years he had been running in an invisible race, where he was trying to show himself as better than others, and when he failed, he would hate himself. The philosopher leaned towards him and said, "Imagine if you could live without the fear of what people will think about you. How light and happy your life would be. You would not need any competition. You would also stop judging others and yourself. You would just enjoy your life, like a dance with no rules." The young man was silent for a while. Then he smiled slowly. "This sounds very good, but it is not so easy practically. How do I ignore what people think? How do I stop myself from comparing?" The philosopher looked into his eyes and said, "Practice, little by little. Every time your mind asks for comparison or approval, ask yourself, am I doing this so that people will like me, or because I truly want to do it?" And slowly, you will feel that your mind itself will start to shift. You will start to get freedom from the chains of others' expectations, and this is the real freedom. The young man took a long breath. Now a slight relief was visible on his face. Perhaps for the first time, he had a glimpse of the freedom that his heart had been longing for years, and now he was ready for a new journey where he had to meet himself, without any mask, without any fear. Chapter 3. Discard other people's tasks. The night had now become even deeper. Outside the window, gentle gusts of wind were shaking the tree branches, reaching the room. The same calm atmosphere was in the room, but this time there was a different glow in the young man's eyes. He had changed a little. The last two dialogues had shed light on many of the murky corners of his mind, but one very big question was still pricking his heart. He looked at the philosopher and said softly, "If the root of my problems is comparing myself with others and seeking approval, then how do I protect myself from all this? How do I stop living according to people's expectations?" The philosopher looked at him with a slight smile. "You just have to do one thing. Throw other people's tasks off your shoulders." The young man became a little confused. "Tasks? What do you mean?" The philosopher backed lounge in his chair and said, "Every person's life has many tasks, like studying, doing a job, maintaining relationships, making efforts for one's own happiness. But often, we take other people's tasks on our heads. We start thinking, what will people think about me? Will they like me? Will I not disappoint them? But all of these are other people's tasks. This is their thinking, their feelings, not your responsibility." The young man stared at him for a while. Then he said slowly, "So if someone dislikes me, that's their task, not mine." "Exactly," said the philosopher. "Your job is to listen to your heart, to make your own life decisions. If someone judges you, that's their task. You have to be free from it. This is discarding other people's tasks. This will give you inner peace." Now the young man became a little restless. "But if I do that, people will say I'm selfish. Will they not misunderstand me?" The philosopher looked into his eyes deeply. "Maybe they will think so, but think. Their expectations are theirs. Why should you run your life based on their hopes? And anyway, no matter how hard you try, you can never make everyone happy. So it's better that you do what you feel is right. This is not selfishness, but your freedom. The young man was still a little hesitant. If I walk my own path, will my relations not break? Will people not leave me alone? This is your biggest fear. That is why you take on other people's tasks. You think if I live up to everyone's expectations, people will accept me, love me. But you forget that in this process, you are moving away from yourself. And then one day when you look in the mirror, your real face is nowhere to be seen. Only the mask that you have worn for others is visible.
Now a slight sadness spread over the young man's face. He started remembering all those moments when he had suppressed his feelings, just so that no one would get hurt or misunderstand him. How many times had he blamed himself for small things, just so that no one would get angry? The philosopher put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Imagine if you were completely free from the expectations of others. If you didn't care whether people liked you or not, think how light you would feel. You would be able to live for your own happiness. You would take risks, do new things. Maybe you would also fail, but that would be your own journey. You would not need to blame anyone. And this is the ultimate maturity." Now a slight glow came into the young man's eyes. "So I am sacrificing my dreams to look perfect in the eyes of others. And if I stop this, maybe for the first time, I will truly live for myself." The philosopher smiled and said, "Yes, and this is the real courage. The courage to say, whether you like me or not, I will live by listening to my heart." This sounds simple, but it is very difficult to do because you still have the fear of rejection, of being left alone. But remember, the people who only like you when you live up to their expectations are not yours. You don't need such people. The people who will stay around you are the ones who will accept you as you are. And trust me, that is a true relationship. Now a long silence fell in the room. The young man was thinking deeply. For the first time, he understood that for so many years, he had been shackling himself in the expectations of others. And perhaps because of this, he was never truly happy. He slowly closed his eyes as if he was looking inside himself. Then he opened his eyes and took a long breath. Now there was a slight peace on his face. Maybe he had decided that from now on, he would live for himself no matter what people thought. Chapter 4. Where the Center of the World Is. That night felt like the deepest one yet. In the silence of the room, only the ticking of the clock echoed. After the last 3 dialogues, the young man felt as if he had reached a different world. There were still questions in his eyes, but this time, curiosity was more than fear. He looked at the philosopher and said, "Now I have started to understand that my troubles are due to comparing myself with others and depending on their expectations and approval. But one thing still deeply bothers me. Why do I think so much about myself? Why does all my happiness, all my sadness revolve around me? Am I very self-centered?" The philosopher looked at him deeply. "Your question is very honest, and this is where the real change begins. Look, we all consider ourselves the center of the world in our minds. Every emotion, every thought first connects with ourselves. Like, do they like me? Or did I do well? Our whole life is like a stage, and we feel that we are the hero of that stage. Everyone else is just a side character, and this is where the problems begin." The young man became a little uncomfortable. "So, am I selfish?" The philosopher laughed. "Selfishness is a natural instinct, but when you start considering yourself the center of everything, you start to ignore the feelings of others and their separate world. You assume that the entire universe is involved in your happiness or sadness, while in reality, Every person is the hero of their own story. What is the biggest drama for you is perhaps not even a zero in someone else's life. The young man thought for a while. Then he said, "So, my importance is much less than I think." "Your importance is not less," said the philosopher softly, "but it is important to understand that you are not the center of the whole world. Every person is a center in themselves. When you start to look from others' perspectives, you get out of your ego. Then you get a real sense of community, and from here you get the belongingness that your heart has been searching for years." Now a slight restlessness returned to the young man's face. Community feeling. This concept seems a little abstract. Does this mean I should forget myself or start living for everyone? The philosopher smiled and said, "No. It means to connect yourself with others, to understand that you are not alone. Your actions affect not only you, but the entire community. You stop judging others. You stop considering yourself superior or inferior to others. Just feel that we are all a part of the same ecosystem. Just as there are different flowers in a garden, so are we all in this world. Everyone has their own color, their own fragrance. No one has to compete with anyone." The young man was silent for a while. Then he said slowly, "So the more I focus on myself, the more I feel isolated. And when I think about others, feel their emotions, that's when I get a connection." "Exactly," said the philosopher. "When you accept your own limitations and imperfections, you can accept others in the same way. You don't need to judge anyone. You don't feel jealous of them, nor does your ego clash. There is just a normal human connection where you naturally belong." Now a slight moisture came to the young man's eyes, because for the first time he felt that maybe he had been looking for his belongingness in the wrong place until now. He kept searching for a place for himself in the approval of others, in their likes and comments, while true belongingness comes when you look at others as your equals, not above or below. Then the philosopher said in a calm voice, "This journey is not easy. Your mind will repeatedly think, 'Will people like me?' But every time you have to remind yourself that your happiness is in your hands. You don't need anyone's applause. You can dance to your own beats, whether anyone watches or not." Now there was a slight smile on the young man's face, as if a new landscape had opened up in front of his eyes. A world where he could get out of the center of his ego and connect with others, where there is no comparison, no hunger for approval, just connection, belongingness, and a pure happiness that does not depend on any external validation. He took a deep breath and looked into the eyes of the philosopher and said, "Maybe for the first time, I feel that I can truly be free, and maybe for the first time, I can truly belong without proving anything." The philosopher nodded and said, "That's it. That's the real journey, to get out of your own center and become a part of that bigger world. And that will give you the peace that you have been searching in the eyes of others until now."
Chapter 5. To live in earnest in the here and now. The night was now in its final hours. The cold gusts of wind outside were reaching the room. The two of them had talked a lot by now about the past, relationships, ego, freedom, but now another question was echoing in the young man's heart. A question that was perhaps the biggest of all. He looked at the philosopher with a little hesitation and said, "Even if I assume that the past doesn't control me, that I can be free from others' expectations, and that I can belong by leaving my ego, there is still one thing that scares me a lot, and that is the future. I am afraid of what will happen tomorrow. What if I fail? What if I try and everyone rejects me? Will I break again?" The philosopher looked at him as if he was seeing through his eyes. Then he said, "Your biggest fear is uncertainty. You think that if you step out of your comfort zone, you might fall. And because of this, you forget to live in the present because of the tension of the future. The young man was silent for a while. Then he said, "Yes, maybe I am so afraid of my future that I can't even properly enjoy today. All the time it feels like something is missing. Something big should happen, and when it doesn't, I get frustrated." The philosopher smiled slowly. "Look, happiness is not in the future. It is in today, in the now. You think that when I have that job, I will be happy, or when people appreciate me, I will feel fulfilled. But the truth is that even when you get all that, your mind will set a new goal, and you will start running in the same race again." Now a slight moisture came to the young man's eyes, because he started remembering all those days when he would make a list of his achievements, hoping that one day it would be complete and he would be happy. But that day never came, and every time something else would just get added to the list. The philosopher leaned towards him and said, "You have to understand that life is not a marathon. It's a dance. In dance, there is no destination. You just have to feel every step, every beat. You are so worried about the future that you miss today's dance. And then one day when you look back, there will only be regrets that you wish you had lived fully at that time." The young man asked softly, "So what do I do? How do I bring myself to the now? How do I convince myself that this moment is the most precious?" The philosopher said, "Every morning, when you wake up, say to yourself, 'I choose to live fully today.' And every time your mind starts worrying about the future, gently bring it back to the now. Look around you, feel the air, listen to your heartbeat. This is life. Past memories and future worries are just your illusion. The reality is only this moment, here and now." Now the young man laughed a little. "This sounds very simple, but it will be difficult to practice because my mind will run towards the future again and again." "Yes, it will run," said the philosopher, "and every time you have to bring it back. This is not a one-time fix. It is a lifelong practice of mindfulness, taking decisions by staying in the present, living according to your values. And this courage will also come only when you accept that life is inherently uncertain. You cannot control what will happen tomorrow. You can only live your today completely." Now the young man's eyes were a little moist, but there was also a peace in them, as if he had found the key he had been waiting for years. He looked at the philosopher and said, "So this means I just have to wake up every morning and say to myself, today I will live completely, free from people's opinions, from the worries of the future, from the guilt of the past, and just enjoy this dance. Is this happiness?" The philosopher looked into his eyes with a slight smile and said, "Yes, this is happiness. Your life is a dance floor. People will come, some will go, some will applaud, some will watch silently. But the real thing is, you have to dance completely from your heart. And when you can do that, you will not need any external approval. You will become your own applause." Now there was a divine silence in the room. The young man got up, taking a deep breath. There was a new glow in his eyes, as if he truly decided that now he would become the hero of his own life, without any script, without any fear. He would just dance on that dance floor to his own beat. And perhaps this was the freedom he had always been searching for. Conclusion. So now as this entire conversation comes to an end, just imagine a long journey where you faced all your fears, your past, your insecurities, where you learned that happiness is not hidden in the eyes of others, but in your own heart, where you learned that no story from your past can bind your freedom, where you realized that whether people like you or dislike you, that's their task, not yours. So now think how light it feels when you get rid of others' expectations, when you leave comparison and just focus on your journey, and when you understand that your life is not a race, but a dance that you have to enjoy every day to your own music. So the next time your mind says, "Will people like me? Will I not fail?" Am I enough? Then just take a deep breath and say, I am here, I am now, and this moment is everything. I will dance for myself, not for anyone's applause. This is the courage to be disliked. This is the real courage to accept yourself completely and live your life on your own terms. And with this beautiful thought, I bid you farewell. I hope this journey gives you as much clarity and freedom as this young man found. So from today, listen to your heart and just live completely, without any fear, without any mask. Thank you.